Hi all, and thank you for joining Detection Triage with Jamf for the Mac admin. Welcome to JNUC Virtual. I'm going to leave up a forward-looking statement here for a few seconds. I'm sure it's the first you've seen today. Awesome. My name is Andrew Medeiros, and I'm a Senior Product Manager for Protect at Jamf. Previously to Jamf, I was with Digital Security, where we set out to build a unique purpose-built solution for macOS endpoints. It's been a little over a year now since I've been with Jamf, and just under a year's time since we took Jamf Protect to the market. We've been making strides with the product, and we couldn't be more excited for the continued value we get to bring organizations that are in constant pursuit of success with Apple products. Previous to my experience with Inpoint security, I was a part of a team that helped secure the assets of large enterprise customers by providing insights into their infrastructure, host, web, mobile assets, to make sure that they were secure. Well, with all things considered in 2020, we're in an exciting time when it comes to endpoint security. The corporate network has been distinctly altered, if not abandoned in smaller instances, due to organizations' austere dedication to enabling a remote workforce. But this talk is really about helping the individuals who know Mac best, which is everybody on this call, to contribute to the overall security posture of their organization, because they can. They know the Mac estate better than anybody. With that said, let's get into it. So the goal of this conversation is stated in this slide. I'm just going to pause for a second and let you read it for yourself. So we know the age-old debate, which has clearly broken down into a mere perception right now. But it's the idea that Macs can't be hacked. Ironically, the handful of people that are listening into this call, you're the folks that understand that in fact is not true, and you've ensconced yourselves as macOS experts in organizations throughout the world. So Macs are powerful machines, we all know that, and it takes someone knowledgeable at the system level to achieve capabilities and create solutions for these organizations. And additionally, security's approach to powerful operating systems are often heavy-handed, something that Mac admins specifically and usually avoid. So a perfect example of that with a InfoSec professional, I will refer to information security professional as InfoSec moving forward within the talk. But a good example is when an InfoSec professional comes to you and wants admin privileges removed from everybody within the Mac estate. Because they're worried about things they're worried about on other operating systems, but they just haven't been aware or understood or been told about the system integrity protection that Apple ships natively to protect the system directory. And this is all knowledge that you all have, but it is something that could behoove the security industry. So with a Mac admin's level of expertise in OS that people have, paired alongside a deeper context of real-time detections of security events, there's no doubt that a Mac admin skill set is valuable to contributing to this security domain. And so the purpose of this talk is to take this powerful information that we are capable of gathering and having insight to, and pairing it in point-in-time incidents and improving macOS security. So here's a list of the things that we're going to focus on. So keep in mind, this is a 200 level talk, and I understand that each item within this list deserves a 400 level class on its own. So the first half will be pretty conceptual, and the back half will dig into lower level insights and examples of a detect and gathering more information from it. I also want to point out that though Jamf Protect is our tool of focus that we're going to focus on here, that doesn't take away from any of the other access that you have from tools to understand what's happening on a Mac. And I encourage all and everybody to use as much as they can to understand as much as they need to about a certain event. So let's take a look at a distinction that we want to make. So I want to take a moment and parse the difference of known malware and an unknown threat. So known malware is a part of an attacker's kill chain, and it's something that we'll get into later on in the slides with regards to a kill chain. But it's malware is known when a hash can be matched, or in Jamf Protect's case, when we block against the team ID that's provided by Apple, that team ID can be matched against one that has been abused. So blocking and prevention is often used around known malware. Though Jamf Protect does provide threat prevention to known malware, it's a small piece of the puzzle with regards to an entire security event, and it's something that we're not going to focus on within this talk. Instead, we're going to take on the heavier work of an unknown threat. So unknown threats are not an easy thing to defend against, and it's a common understanding within the security space. So many people want an answer to how to address unknown threats. But the reality of it is that preventing something that's unknown is very difficult. So the true threat, the true unknown threats, they have a crafted sequence of events. And these sequence of events are created with a few things in mind. One is a high-level understanding of how humans operate with technology, and the other is a lower-level understanding of how technology can work in roundabout ways to achieve non-apparent actions and objectives. So considering a well-crafted threat incorporates a high-level understanding of how a human operates with technology and includes a complex agenda that's beyond just simple abuse of technology, but results in further objectives. It's pretty apparent of why it's important to have a human looped into the middle of analysis. There's a lot of talk within the industry about using technology and computational logic to do the work for us. And I think that's good and great to a degree when it comes to scale. However, the art of an attacker is about adding new tactics to an arsenal, repurposing them in unique and creative ways to ultimately be able to deliver effective, novel attacks in an unknown way. So let's talk a little bit about macOS tooling to help us with those unknown threats. Now, in order to have the proper tooling, this is kind of the ideal state. First and foremost, shout out to Apple and the native built-in tools that they continue to upkeep. But the native security of Gatekeeper helps nefarious applications from landing on the Mac and installing. Apple does a great job locking down their OS for what they deem malicious. And there's always areas for improvement, but overall, having the OS have something like Gatekeeper is an awesome thing to point out. Ensuring visibility into just routine macOS activity. It helps understand what's actually happening within the system and how the system's being used. So the other item that's really important is to have Mac-specific detections that will alert you in the event that a part of macOS's system is being abused. Given that you have the visibility and given that you have the Mac-specific detections, you already right there have more than enough to be able to escalate to a security professional and really let them know what it is that's happened and where they should look. And that's what we'll get on. That's what we'll get into at the end of this call. But another proper tool for macOS security triage is to collect artifacts back from a machine. So a lot of times people will tell everyone about what they need or what they should do, but they don't give them an idea of what that world would look like if they didn't have proper tooling. So I wanted to kind of go into what this would look like. Without an alerting system to notify, one would really rely on the end user to notify if something went wrong. And they could possibly rely on a management policy to monitor if it was something that they defined. Now, let's assume that someone does have an alerting mechanism, but they don't have the proper visibility to understand the scope. Well, in that case, they would probably have to go do further collection and sift through artifacts for a lengthy amount of time and try to create a narrative to understand the scope of the event that may have happened. And many times, sometimes, maybe never, depends, but it could be a false positive or somebody messing around on their computer and being adventurous, and that would be a bit of a time suck without the context up front. In a best case scenario, I guess that's weird to say, but in a best case scenario of a not ideal situation, you would have an alerting mechanism set up. You would have the proper context to give you the scope and visibility, but you wouldn't have a way to locally collect artifacts. Security professionals are going to love to see more. It's a cost-benefit analysis between signal and noise. Everybody wants more signal and less noise, but once a signal is had, anything and everything is desired. So collecting more artifacts, even if a lot of the data is redundant, is still going to be beneficial to the next steps of a detect. All right. So now that we've talked about what proper tooling looks like, let's move forward with the tool of choice here, which is Jamf Protect. So when we use Protect, there's a lot of advantages that we're getting by using the Protect tool. Now, Gatekeeper, as I mentioned, is a phenomenal tool. Gatekeeper is also something that does periodically fall subject to being bypassed. So logging Gatekeeper is important, but not so much for the bypass mechanism, but also just understanding the psychology of your users and what they're clicking on and why, where are they getting information from, and understanding that malicious sites are exposed to your users. It's very useful information. The other thing that Jamf Protect provides is Jamf managed detections. So we have a team of macOS security professionals who are responsible for hunting for anomalous behavior. And by way of analysis, they identify how such behaviors can be applied to have a malicious outcome. And therefore, the macOS security knowledge is integrated with Jamf Protect. So we get the benefit of the continued research within our detects, and we can rest assured that as macOS and attacks grow within the wild and they both evolve, so do the existing detections that are hosted within Protect. These specific detects are also modeled after attacker tactics and techniques. So when O days or 0 days get released in the wild and are eventually found and written about, they're important to track because likely there was at least one technique that was novel and was therefore capable of bypassing some technological barrier. So as much as those O days need to be blocked moving forward, it's most important to understand the tactics that got them there. And we will dig into this a little bit more about what a kill chain looks like. But it's more important to understand what got them there so that you can be identified when those tactics get repurposed. This is essentially a new weapon for attackers to put in their arsenal. So therefore, we use that same model and put it in our defense arsenal to make sure that we are shedding light on any time that that tactic is being used. So let's take a look at what a Jamf Protect Detect is. The detect is what we're going to focus on from here on out. And in this case, it's going to be an alert. So an active event that requires attention that leads to a security incident and demands verification of some kind. Now, a Jamf Protect Detect potentially identifies exploitation and the installation state of an attacker's kill chain. Let's go into what that means a little bit more. So here's an overview of an attacker's kill chain. I'll go through all of it very quickly, but then we'll single out what we're focused on, as I had mentioned earlier. So recon is the preliminary research and strategy to understand what a target is and how a target can be vulnerable. Weaponization is crafting a mechanism that can be used to achieve what the attacker wants. So kind of in very medieval terms, weaponization would be creating the arrowhead out of a stone. When it comes to delivery, delivery mechanism would be being pushed to a malicious site, linked to a malicious site, and therefore in the area to receive the next stage, which would be the exploit. The exploit is when you bypass either a human or a technological barrier to gain persistence within installation. And once persistence is achieved, then a command and control server often follows, which is a way to communicate with the victim's machine. And an action and an objective is the end goal, which sometimes, usually, is exfiltration, and sometimes is other objectives. So that's the basic overview of an attacker's kill chain. All right, and as we whittle that down, these are the specific aspects of the kill chain that are relevant to us at Protect. So when we're looking at the Inpoint specifically, we do an okay job of delivery. So we're looking for suspicious downloads, and we're looking for Office macros, which is a common spear phishing attack. But I do want to put delivery aside because our main focus is on exploitation and installation. Exploitation in this case, an example would be our insecure elevated execution analytic, which monitors for the deprecated API within Apple, that if an application uses that deprecated API, they are subject to authentication or privilege escalations via authentication. And then below that, user elevated privileges is another example of exploitation, trying to get a user to elevate for the attacker, or the attacker finds a way to elevate themselves. As far as installation goes, this is mainly known as persistence, as mentioned earlier, but any type of process or file creation execution that happens after installation, and then as well as gatekeeper detections, as that's a common way of understanding when installation is trying to occur. Now, let's take a look at the security incident here. So within this security incident, we're going to look at a couple different analytics, or a couple different detects that are related. So we go next here. We will see a video. You'll see that we get the computer name right there, Jamf Protect. Then we get two timestamps that are at the same time, two different analytics, hash dump, reverse shell, Python that give us context. As we toggle between the two, we see that they have the same number of processes, which we'll go into later. Therefore, this is most likely happening along the same event or same time frame. We'll notice that we gather the machine's IP, so we know the IP address. We get some other system info, such as the serial number, if that's something you opt in for within Protect. Also, our threat prevention version database, if that is enabled, as well as macOS versions. So we'll also get analytic matching details, which give us a little bit of context around what that analytic or detect is actually meaning. In this case, you'll see that it's mapped to MITRE, and we'll see process arguments here, which we will circle back to later on. So this is context of a process that triggered that analytic, and we can see what users were a part of it. So in this case, you have my Jamf Protect user within my VM, and then also a root user within this process. and process tree, and we'll go through that process tree here shortly. So now that we've had two analytics fire and we have all of that information gathered, best practices here within a security incident would be go collect additional artifacts. Now, we have enough information in that detect to understand what's going on and the fact and the fact that we have the context and scope to continue looking into other areas. But we want to collect this information before it goes away. So here's just a local video of running a bash collection script to print off text files so that we have these artifacts handy. Now, doing this does take a little bit of time, and it's something that we can easily connect with Pro and automate, which I will show you the functionality of doing that at the end of this talk, at least the way that you would be able to do that with extension attributes. But I want to show it locally real fast, just to show how many artifacts you can collect and the process at which you do that. Now, we have a lot of files there. However, a lot of these files are actually consist of data that is already known. So I've sped up this video a little bit, but I just wanted to show you as I go through these different text files and scroll through the data that's within this terminal window, you'll see there's a lot of data there, and actually none of it is going to be useful to us because what is useful within this data has already been collected by the Protect Detect. Now, Protect makes a stance to only collect suspicious behavior. We don't pull back artifacts of anything and everything and then parse through that data because we find that unnecessary. Instead, we look for what is specific, what is suspicious, and what is minimal with the appropriate context to allow professionals to look into further. So with that said, this is all the information that we know so far from the detect. And of that information that we ran through within the collection stage, it is all redundant to this information that we already have. So that information that we ran through in the collection stage was system info, who-based data, if config information, network-based info, and user info. And all of that was brought to us immediately in real time with our detect. So all is good there. You'll notice the final item on here is the corresponding process tree. Let's dive into what that means. When it comes to a process tree, it's an important thing to capture, and it's something that's often misconstrued. So a process tree is a sequence of events that occur on a Mac which demonstrate the process that's responsible for spawning another process. So in this example, you see it goes terminal app, clear through Python process, but showing the login bash and sudo information in between is useful. Otherwise, if you just saw terminal app to the Python process, you might miss that privileges were escalated in between. So the issues with process trees are mainly that all process trees usually map back to launch D, which is PID number 1, without actually demonstrating where that process is from. So you want to make sure that you don't miss anything in between. As I go to this next video, I'll show you an example of pulling up Calculator within Spotlight and then looking at it in the activity monitor to see what PID is responsible for Calculator. In this case, it should be Spotlight, but instead what we're getting is we see the Calculator PID, which I'm highlighting here, but we see that the parent process there is launch D, which is PID number 1. In fact, though, when we pull up terminal and we look for proc info on the Calculator PID that we just pulled from the GUI, we see, in fact, that we get a printout of information. And within that information, we can actually see that the responsible process hidden within all this data is indeed Spotlight. So that is exactly what the Protect Detect is doing with a lengthy process tree. Is it is giving you all of this information and putting together a clear contextual storyboard so that you can follow and identify what you need to look into further. And I'll show you an example of how we do that later on. So I think I ran this video a little too long. There it is, right there. So we'll see it, Spotlight 465. Awesome. Now, as we go on to our next slide, we'll look at another problem with processes. So, and the advantage of using Protect Detect to make sure and ensure that you're getting everything. Here we're looking at that reverse shell Python detect, which we'll spend the rest of our time on. You'll see that at the very top of the process tree, there is a Python process at 47239 and a bash process at 47230. So when we look for this within our artifacts in our PSOX file, I think I have to run the video, but I don't want to skip it. Let's see. I just skipped it. All right, let's see what we could do here. So it looks like I just auto ran that. But if you look closely, you'll see that I'm egrepping those two PIDs and looking within that PSOX folder that I created within collection, and I'm not getting any information from that. So though this collection of artifacts is from the time that triggered, I'm not seeing anything there. Now, what if I go to the original process, which is the terminal PID, and I put that in here? We will see sorry for the silence here. Yep, so if we put the proper terminal PID in, oh, I think these videos are messed up. Sorry, there it is. That's the proper terminal PID. There we go. So we get a response. So even in the artifacts that we collect, we are not collecting all of the PIDs that we need that are right there within the Protect Detect. So once again, collection necessary because people always want more. It's good context, and I'll show you how that context can be used, but it does also miss some of the information. So as we look into the Protect Detect, we'll notice that within the process tree, now that you all are well aware of what that is and how that's valuable, we can show you quickly, the lengthy process tree that's collected here. In this case, it's a 15 processes within this detect, and it's important to see them all, but also look into the arguments of the process to try to see a little bit more information before you dig to understand what's being passed in those arguments and what are areas that you can look deeper into. You'll see that within that pseudo process, I identify the script that was ran. So that's useful information. And then also, as I search for arguments, then I will also see an attacker's IP within that reverse shell Python. So I now have information that this detect fired because of a attempt at a backdoor, and I have an IP there. So rather than trying to do some attribution looking in that IP, instead what I want to do is I want to make sure that the IP didn't connect to this machine because we don't have that information here. So how would I do that? This is where we leverage the artifacts that we're collecting. So, sorry. We play the video. We will be looking into our collection script. We'll specifically be doing a look into the list of all things output. As I make that terminal window wider and I scroll to the top, I'll see a name column. And as I highlight that name column and just move my way down, I'm going to be scanning underneath that name column for SSH. As I get to the bottom, I find that there is no SSH connection here. So I have a little bit more verification that though that attempted backdoor was real, it was something that was detected, something that I needed to know about. I can validate that during this time frame of that event, there was no SSH connection. Now, obviously, within security, you can't rule out everything because of that, but it's great information to understand what's going on. So we also saw that this user within our Jamf Protect detect, that this specific event was spawned from a terminal. Now, maybe this is somebody who seems like they would mess around with the terminal, but also it's not a part of their job. So we want to go in and we want to use the artifacts to find out more information by looking in the last command, by identifying whether this person was going, in and out of multiple terminals using terminal, and or whether privileges were escalated and an attacker was using the terminal. So everywhere you see TTY and then 000, or I think you'll see up to 003, depends how many windows are open, that identifies that this specific user was using terminal heavy. So this is not a surprise if they're a developer or something like that, but it's just other contextual information that may not be useful to you on the surface, but it's something that when digging, it can give you a little bit more information and contextual validation. So now that we're nearing the end of the talk, let's take a look at what we can do with a smart group. So as you all know, the ability to leverage smart groups are endless. And all I have done here is just set up the connection. There's a lot more that you can do here. But within this video, I look for the reverse shell Python detect, which is the one that we've triaged and gathered other information on and kind of made a decision around severity there. I've added the SSH check to that smart group, and I have an SSH list of all things smart group set up within Pro. So now as I go and I fire this detect off, we will see a reverse shell Python. It should come up at 7:15. There it is. 2 of them, in fact. So now when I go and I look in Jamf Pro and I refresh the page, you'll see that I am now a part of that smart group by adding that specific extension attribute to that analytic. So you'll see there's a 0 there. As I go and hit refresh, it will turn to a 1. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to actually set that up to run the list of all things script, so that in the event that a reverse shell from Python analytic hits again, that you can just go to Pro and then get the readout of that list of all things, so you can quickly see if SSH had connected during the time frame of your collection. But that would be kind of the ideal use case here to just further yourself, put your stamp on the security side of macOS and make sure that you are elevating your macOS knowledge to help the overall security of macOS within the industry. So thank you for taking the time to talk. I hope to be able to talk to you all again and soon regarding Jamf Protect, and am open to emails and connecting on anything security related for macOS. Thank you.